I'm here at Super Return in Boston, and I'm joined by Ken Mehlman. He's a partner at KKR, and he is in charge of global public affairs. Thank you so much,
Thank
Ken.
you for taking the time, and thanks for being here.
I think I'm supposed to thank you. So let's start on what you just spoke about on the panel, and this idea that private equity firms are using more and more operational expertise to generate returns and improve businesses. We've heard that a lot from other firms as well. What makes KKR different?
Well, I think that one of the differences we bring to the table is we have 60 people in our firm who are operational experts. One gentleman is an expert at Lean Six Sigma. Someone else is an expert in purchasing. We've got folks who are experts in Salesforce optimization and training. We've got a gentleman who's an expert in risk mitigation and insurance purchasing. And these 60 people go into the company, typically for an 18 to 24 month period, and focus with that company on the specific area we think that that company can be operationally enhanced. Also important is what they do is not just something that we kind of think of one day. It's part of our entire investment process. So when we're looking at a company, when we sit down with our investment committee, we say, what's our thesis? What do we do to make this company better? And a huge part of that, in many cases, is we operate it better, we operate it in a more effective way, we operate it to grow, and we have a specific process with specific metrics that this expert can help us within the company accomplish during the context of our ownership period.
Why the focus on operations now? Why does it seem to be the hot topic?
Well, I'm not sure why it's a hot topic today. Look, I think that what's happened, if you think about the private equity industry over the last, say, 30 years, when the industry started, the industry's always been about, first and foremost, solving problems for companies. How do we make companies better? When it first started, there were a couple of problems that the founders of the industry encountered. One was the fact that too often the people that ran companies thought of themselves as agents and not as owners. They got paid well regardless of how the company did. So they didn't have incentives to improve that company.
You mean they didn't make carry?
Well, that's one way to look at it. But they didn't focus enough on return, on investment. The second problem you had was companies didn't focus on what their cash flow returns were. They focused in many cases on how big their balance sheet was. So you had in the late 70s and early 80s these huge conglomerates that weren't very efficiently run. And what private equity brought to the table was a better alignment around how managers were compensated and around how balance sheets were used, both of which focused on optimizing returns on investment. And in some ways, you think about it, that improved how the capital structure and how the corporate management worked. Operational improvements take that alignment concept and take it to the next level and say, how do we make sure that other aspects of the company are run in a way that improves that company, that grows that company, that again, focuses on that critical question on return on investment.
Okay, so clearly improving operations is a way more expensive proposition than just financial engineering or the way private equity used to do business, let's say in the 70s, 80s, 90s. In addition to those expenses, you also have other expenses like getting your message out, dealing with the press, dealing with government officials.
The press.
All of that costs money. So how does that impact returns ultimately?
Well, I think ultimately the goal is to improve these companies, and what we try to do is we look at every cost that we have and every cost our companies have in terms of, again, that critical question of return on investment. And in some cases, depending on the company, those are expenses that are important to return a good investment. In other cases where they're not, those are areas where there's less focus. But it all comes down to that question of what is your return on investment? And the way you get that done, in our experience, is a very disciplined process. You need an investment thesis. You need a regular oversight of the portfolio. We've got a portfolio management committee where the leader of our operational expert effort, named Dean Nelson, has a group called Capstone. He's part of that process, where former CEOs of companies in similar industries from around the world help advise the CEO of that company. And we regularly look at our metrics and we say, how are we doing on improving the company? How are we doing on those aspects that we think are most likely to impact the return on investment? And we make adjustments based on the learnings we have from that.
So sticking to this idea of advisors, I mean, KKR just announced that it hired or is going to start a formal relationship with General Petraeus.
Yes, we're very excited about that. We think it's going to be great for our investors and great for the firm.
So talk to me a little bit about how important senior advisors or these kinds of partnerships are to the firm and how that kind of stacks up how that stacks up to the operational capabilities that you have. Because clearly he's got a slightly different mandate.
Right. Dave is not a senior advisor. At the same time, our senior advisors are incredibly important to us, and they provide a critical role in our companies in all kinds of different areas, providing expertise. In some cases, Joe Forehand is a senior advisor to the firm. He, for a period, helped lead one of our companies, and that was critically important. His work, his leadership in that company.
So how is General Petraeus' role different
General
from
Petraeus will lead
advisor?
an effort called the KKR Global Institute. And what that effort will do, we hope, is build on the work that my colleague Henry McVeigh and I have tried to do over the last 5 years, which is to help us understand macroeconomic, geopolitical, governance, environmental, regulatory, external factors that in today's world are really important to the success of an investment or the failure of an investment, and are really important to helping our companies do even better and be better citizens. So if you think about it, in the world we live in today, decisions that are made, for example, by central banks have an outsized importance in how economic performance of a company and of a country are likely to work.
But what does General Petraeus have to
Henry
do with?
McVeigh helps us think about that.
Okay.
What General Petraeus helps us understand helps us think about, as we're investing in new regions and new areas, and as we're thinking about new industries, General Petraeus will help us bring his own expertise and experience alongside that of our deal team, and it'll be a much smarter process. Think about, if you're the director of the Central Intelligence Agency in today's world, what do you have to understand? You have to understand how key industries are going to, and how industrial and technological changes are going to impact not only the United States, but other countries around the world. That requires him to have a familiarity with those companies, with industry leaders. This is a student of the world. At KKR, what we have found over the years is if we can combine great athletes with different skills and bring them together, the combination, the synergy between them makes us better investors because we understand the company and we understand the world. And I think when you combine the expertise that our country experts and our regional experts and our industry experts bring with Dave Petraeus, it'll make us better investors.
Okay, really quickly, because you are a former Washington insider and you still have very strong connections to that world, talk to me a little bit about what impact the industry, or actually I should say it like this, what impact Romney's run for president has had on the industry, and whether that's a lasting impact at all, or was it just a blip that we almost don't hear about private equity in the lay press anymore?
Right. What I think that the Romney candidacy did was it accelerated a trend that you were already seeing occur in the industry. And that was a recognition that we as private equity investors, for us to be successful today, we need to understand not only the perspective of the shareholder, but the perspective of the stakeholders. Those stakeholders may be employees of the company, they may be the community where the company operates, they include the environmental footprint of the company. All of those are areas where we need to engage with people, and we need to explain what we're doing, and we need to listen to what their considerations are, and we need to try to find where we can a win-win. And so to be a good investor today, you need to be a good industrialist and a good owner, and that involves understanding that stakeholder's perspective as well as the shareholder's perspective. That was already happening, and I feel like having someone from your industry run for president, which does increase attention on the industry, accelerated that trend.
But that attention is no longer there on the industry.
I think that there's still that attention. It may not be on the industry per se, but you want to invest around the world today, you need to understand these considerations. And by the way, you'll be a better investor, and your companies will be better companies and better citizens if you do.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks, Ken.